Today, we're diving into something huge that's happening in the world of money. It's a story about a plan from some of the world's biggest economies to build a totally new payment system. And we're going to focus on what it all means right here for India. All right, let's get into it.
So, let me start by asking you a question. Just think about it for a second. 60 million barrels of oil. I mean, that is an enormous amount of energy. Do you think it's even possible to pull off a deal that massive, completely outside of the US dollar system? Well, the answer might surprise you. It's a big yes. And not only is it possible, get this, India just did it. And that one move could be a huge signal about where global trade is headed.
Oh, you're probably wondering, how on earth did they manage that? This wasn't just some theory or a plan on paper. No, this was a real-world deal. And it makes this big, abstract idea of de-dollarization suddenly very, very real.
Okay, let's break it down. The setup was simple. India needs energy, Iran has it. But the big roadblock has always been the dollar. You see, paying for Iranian oil in dollars would immediately trigger US sanctions. So they had to get creative. The payment was actually made in Chinese yuan, using China's own payment system, SIPS. You can think of it like a parallel financial highway that runs completely separate from the Western-controlled SWIFT system. The whole thing happened completely off the US grid. And it proved that a major economy like India can secure its energy, a critical commodity, without touching the dollar at all.
But that begs the question, right? Why go through all this trouble in the first place? To get that, we've got to talk about the US dollar itself. For decades, it's been the undisputed king of global finance. But that kind of power, well, it can cut both ways.
This story really starts back in the 1970s with something called the petrodollar system. The U.S. struck a really clever deal with the big oil producers like Saudi Arabia. They got them to agree to one simple rule: price your oil only in U.S. dollars. And since pretty much every country on the planet needs oil, well, guess what? Every country needs dollars to buy it. And just like that, you create permanent, global demand for your currency, locking it in as the world's go-to money.
Now, for the United States, this system is fantastic. It helps keep their borrowing costs low and lets them run huge trade deficits. It's a massive advantage. But, and this is a really big but, for every other country, it creates a serious risk. Your economy becomes deeply vulnerable to American foreign policy. If your country falls out of favor with Washington, poof, you could be cut off from the very system that makes global trade work.
And this gets us to the heart of the matter. The U.S. has absolutely used this power. It's what people now call the weaponization of finance. They can freeze a country's assets or cut its banks off from SWIFT and basically bring an economy to its knees. And you know what? A lot of countries, even those that are friendly with the U.S., are looking at this situation and thinking, no way, we need a backup plan.
And that is exactly where this group comes in. The BRICS nations, we're talking Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, plus a bunch of new members. They're the ones actively trying to build that backup plan. Just to give you a sense of the scale here, the BRICS bloc now represents about 45% of the entire global population. Let that sink in. This isn't some small club we're talking about. This is nearly half of humanity.
And economically, they are an absolute powerhouse. Together, they account for more than a third of the world's entire economy. So yeah, when a group this large decides they want to build a new system, the world has no choice but to pay attention.
All right, so what's the big plan? Well, the core idea is to create a new payment platform, which people are starting to call BRICS Pay. The goal is super simple: allow member countries to trade directly with each other using their own currencies without ever needing to convert into US dollars first.
And the really smart part is, they're not trying to build this whole thing from scratch. The plan is to stitch together the successful technologies that they already have. I mean, think about how seamless and easy UPI is here in India. The idea is to connect that kind of system with Russia's Mir network and China's massive platforms like WePay and Alipay. You'd create one unified framework where, in theory, making an international payment could be as simple as scanning a QR code at your local store.
But here's where it gets a little more complex, because India isn't just following someone else's lead here. New Delhi has its own, very clear strategy for this new financial world.
You see, while Russia might be pushing hard for a brand new shared BRICS system, India's priority is a bit different. The focus from Prime Minister Modi's government has been on taking our own world-class technology, UPI, and expanding it across the BRICS nations. It's all about leveraging a proven Indian success story on the global stage.
And it's really important to remember, India already has its own financial infrastructure in place.
While the world uses SWIFT and China built its SIPs for yuan payments, India has its own system called SFMS. The foundation for this kind of financial independence, it's already been laid.
India's strategy is really a multi-pronged attack. It's not just about one system. New Delhi is actively pushing the rupee for international trade, signing deals with countries like the UAE and Malaysia so we can settle our trade in our own currency. It's also set up these special accounts called SRVAs, with over 20 countries now to make rupee trade easier. It is all part of a much larger push to internationalize the rupee and Indian payment systems like UPI and RuPay.
So let's bring it all home. What does this all mean for the future? As a young investor here in India, what should you really take away from all these massive global shifts?
First things first, it's crucial to have the right perspective. The US dollar is not going to collapse next week. As one analysis puts it, this is a slow, structural shift. It's an evolution, not an overnight revolution.
And the data really backs this up. Just look at this. Back in the year 2000, the dollar made up about 71% of all the money central banks held in reserve around the world. Today, that number has fallen to around 58%. It's a clear downward trend, for sure, but it also shows the dollar is still, by far, the dominant player in the game.
So here's the most important takeaway. For a country like India, the goal right now isn't to kill the dollar. It's to build a more pluralistic system, basically a world with more choices, a world where India can trade with the UAE in rupees, with Russia in their local currencies, and with the West in dollars. Because more options mean more flexibility, more resilience, and ultimately more control over our own economic destiny.
And that leaves us with the final big question. For the last 50 years, we've lived in a world dominated by a single currency. But as India and the other BRICS nations build these new financial highways, we have to ask ourselves, is the future of money going to be dominated by one currency or by many? That's the question that's going to define the global economy for decades to come.